1979. The night before my fateful day, I, Anna Lay, was dragged into the darkness of an abandoned brick kiln on the outskirts of town. My legs were broken, my dignity stolen, and my heart shattered beneath the hands of beasts. When I woke up in the hospital, the sting of disinfectant burned my nose, and my body ached as if it had been ripped apart. Out in the hallway, Chris Kent had been kneeling for 3 days and 3 nights without moving. His hoarse voice echoed through the freezing rain. "Has she woken up yet? Dad, please, let me see her just once." Then came the sharp crack of a slap tearing through the air. His father roared, "You disgraceful son, for a venomous woman like that, what have you done to your fiancé?" Chris cried as he argued back, "This has nothing to do with Jessica. It was my own choice. I'll marry Anna Lee. Even if her legs are broken, I'll take care of her for the rest of my life." Another slap thundered. Mr. Kent kicked him and snarled, "You think you're capable, huh? Taking care of a mistress while hiring thugs to kidnap your fiancée and force her. Do you still deserve the Kent name? If she doesn't wake up, you'll kneel here until you die." I heard every word clearly. "Forcing her? I won't allow it," Chris shouted. I squeezed my eyes shut, my heart freezing inch by inch. The vows he once swore to marry me, to protect me forever, now sounded more disgusting than last night's nightmare. I died, in the sound of Chris Kent's regretful sobs. When I opened my eyes again, I was back in the cramped little house in the countryside. In front of my bed, the matchmaker beamed at me with a flattering smile. "The Kent family really came to propose. You're blessed, child. Chris is now a young intellectual. By the end of the year, he could take you to the city." I froze. Wasn't this the exact year before I was selected for the cultural troupe? I had already lived through rebirth. The matchmaker happily tugged at my hand. "The poor girl lost her parents early. Everyone pitied her hardships, but now she's lucky. Mr. Kent personally asked me to come and propose. You two grew up together. He insists on marrying her." I suddenly threw off the blanket and ran straight to the backyard. At the entrance of the village, a man was walking toward me in a neatly pressed dark green uniform, a military bag slung over his straight shoulders. His face was calm, cold. Daniel Hart, the son of my father's comrade in arms. I rushed over and gripped his hand tightly. "Daniel Hart, will you marry me?" He looked startled, then his deep voice answered firmly, "Me." I nodded, my voice trembling but resolute. "Yes, I know how to dance. I can perform and earn money. If you'll marry me, I swear I'll never hold you back or get in your way." He was silent for a moment, then suddenly chuckled softly. "All right, I'll marry you." "Anna, hurry back," the matchmaker called. "The Kent family's here to propose." Inside the house, Chris Kent's mother sat primly in the front room while the matchmaker's grin nearly split her face. Oh my, to have such in-laws, what a blessing earned through lifetimes of virtue. With a bang, the door burst open. Chris Kent stood there in a faded shirt. The moment he saw me, he quickly stood up with a gentle smile. "Anna, I came to take you home." That voice, once the thing I loved most in my past life, now dripped with mockery. I stepped in, Daniel Hart following behind me, his uniform crisp, his epaulettes gleaming in the sunlight so bright it hurt to look. The matchmaker called out sharply, "Anna, where are you going? Look how much the Kent family values you." I glanced coldly at Chris Kent. "I don't agree to this marriage." His mother's face darkened. "Anna Lee, what did you just say?" I said I won't marry Chris Kent. I already love someone else. Step by step, I walked up to him, curled my lips into a cold smile, and whispered, "You're not worthy." Chris Kent's mother's face darkened. "The two of you had an engagement since childhood. Do you plan to go back on it now?" Chris frowned and quickly stepped forward. "Anna, did I do something wrong? Tell me, and I'll change." I stepped back, my eyes filled with disgust. "No, I've changed." Chris muttered the words under his breath, as if not believing them. "Changed? Yes, I've fallen for someone else." When I said it, my cheeks didn't flush, my heart didn't tremble. Instead, a faint smile tugged at the corner of my lips. I looked straight at Daniel Hart. "I want to marry him." Chris stared at me in shock. "Who is he?" I walked forward and took the wrist of the man standing at the doorway. "Daniel Hart, a soldier, my fiancé." Turning back, I raised our joined hands high, our fingers tightly intertwined, facing the entire stunned room. "This is the man I chose myself. No one forced me, no one arranged it. It was love at first sight." The light in Chris's eyes shattered little by little. Didn't you once say you hated soldiers? That you feared the hardship of following them, being relocated every time they were transferred? I laughed softly. Yes, but later I understood it wasn't that I hated soldiers, I just hadn't met the man I loved. His mother burst out angrily. How could you treat Chris this way? Everyone knows how good he has been to you. I arched an eyebrow. So what? Does that mean I don't deserve someone better? Listen well, the Kent family, today I refuse this marriage. I want to marry Daniel Hart. From this day forward there will be nothing between me and the Kents. The room fell into silence. Even the matchmaker stood frozen, unable to react. Chris's mother was the first to leap up. My son loves you, and you dare say such foolish things? I didn't bother to glance at her, only fixed my eyes on Chris Kent's, filled with grief. Good. That night the wind howled and rattled the windows. Just as I finished fastening the latch, a low voice drifted from the courtyard gate. Anna, it's me. I froze. That voice was too gentle, like something drawn out from a dream. Pulling on a coat, I crept out into the yard. The gate creaked open into the dark night, and there stood Chris Kent, motionless, as if he had been waiting a long time. He wore only a thin shirt, the wind whipping his hair into disarray, his eyes tinged red. Are you really going to marry that Hart fellow? He asked. I stayed silent. He gave a bitter smile. I haven't eaten or slept for 2 days. All I can think about is you. You said you wouldn't marry me, that you liked someone else. I don't believe it. Anna, you're not that kind of person. He stepped closer, reaching out as if to touch me. I frowned and backed away. Are you afraid of me? He asked. His hand froze in midair, his voice dropping low. I didn't mean anything else. I just want to know, is there still a place for me in your heart? At those words, a faint string inside me trembled. In my previous life, he had never crossed the line. During the years I lived in the countryside, he often cared for me, bringing food and drink, even taking me to town to have new clothes made. I once believed he was sincere, but when we returned to the city, he fell for Jessica at first sight, betraying me and ruining me until my death. I looked at him coldly. Chris Kent, leave. I don't want to see you again. Anna, he suddenly lunged forward, but a clean, slender hand blocked his path in front of me. She told you to go, didn't you understand? At some point, Daniel Hart had come to stand by my side. Clad in his gray-green uniform, the night made his figure seem even more forbidding. His voice wasn't loud, but it carried a sharp edge impossible to ignore. Chris's face changed instantly. Stay out of this. It's none of your business. She's my fiancé. Daniel responded with a calm, steady tone, letting 5 words fall into the night air. She is not yours anymore. His voice wasn't loud, but it struck like a slap across Chris Kent's face. I held on to Daniel Hart's arm. Don't mind him, let's just go home. Chris froze for a moment, then looked at me. Anna, you protect him like this? We grew up together, and now you just say your heart has changed? I met his gaze directly, my tone steady and without hesitation. Yes. My heart has changed. If you had cherished me, protected me a few years earlier, maybe I would have still been soft-hearted. But now it's different. My heart already belongs to Daniel Hart. Leave, Chris. Stop disturbing my life. It was as if all the strength drained from his body. He stood dazed for a few seconds, then lowered his head and gave a bitter laugh. You've really changed. You never spoke to me like this before. His eyes carried a trace of resentment as he glanced at Daniel and muttered something under his breath before turning and walking away, the cold wind sweeping through the hem of his coat. Daniel stood beside me in silence for a long while before asking gently, Are you cold? I shook my head, but suddenly noticed my fingers were icy. A moment later, a large, warm hand wrapped around mine, dry and steady. I'm here, he said softly. It was early spring and the wind was still sharp, yet the entrance of the village was bustling with excitement. Firecrackers popped and crackled, bright red fabric was hung all around the gate, dazzling to the eye. The matchmaker's mouth nearly twisted with her smile. The Le family's daughter, your fortune just keeps getting better and better. Daniel stood straight in his military uniform beside me, handsome and dignified. The new outfit, made of fine fabric and sent by his mother, fit him perfectly. In the crowd, whispers stirred. Wasn't she already engaged to the Kent family? Why is the groom different now? Just look, the new groom is far superior to the Kents. I heard everything, but my expression remained calm. Out of the corner of my eye, though, I caught a familiar figure. Chris Kent was there too, standing behind the crowd in a worn overcoat, his face pale, his eyes fixed on our tightly clasped hands as if he wanted to burn a hole through them. The engagement banquet was held at the company grounds at the head of the village. Everyone, young and old, came to drink and celebrate. Daniel raised his glass to the village chief. "Don't worry, sir. I'll take care of Anna for a lifetime." From inside the banquet I turned and saw Chris standing in a narrow alley, his eyes hollow. I smiled faintly, then hooked my arm through Daniel's. "Let's go, we need to prepare to head into the city." The day we set out, a light drizzle fell. Daniel held an umbrella over me as he helped me onto the truck, wrapping his old cotton coat around me. "It's cold. Don't let yourself freeze." Throughout the journey, he didn't talk much. He only handed me dry rations and hot water, occasionally turning his head to check if I had fallen asleep. Resting against the window, I watched the village fade into the distance, feeling no regret at all. In my past life, I had followed Chris Kent, losing even the chance to audition for the cultural troupe. And in the end, I died silently in that small hospital. When the train pulled into the station, the rain had stopped and the sun broke through. On the platform, a middle-aged couple stood waiting. The woman wore a dark green coat, the man a military cap, his face stern. "Mom, Dad," Daniel called. I bowed politely. "Hello, sir. Hello, ma'am." "Just like her," his father murmured, his eyes reddening. "Good child, you've suffered so much already." Then he suddenly kicked Daniel hard from behind. "Brat, you were supposed to bring home a wife, and instead you tricked her into coming? Have you bullied her?" Daniel's stern face flushed red with embarrassment. "No, I haven't." I let the father and son bicker, while his mother stepped forward, taking my hand with a gentle smile. "Come, daughter. The house is ready." Auntie brought me back to the military logistics compound, neat and orderly. Daniel's mother had set aside the east room just for me, laying her old cotton quilt across the bed. For dinner, she made a pot of sauerkraut vermicelli soup with steaming hot buns, exactly to my taste. While I was eating happily, she suddenly asked, "Anna, when do you and Daniel plan to marry?" I froze, nearly dropping my chopsticks. Daniel tightened his grip on my hand. "Mom, don't scare her." She chuckled. "I'm not rushing you. I just value Anna, that's all. Don't worry, child. If you truly become part of this family, I'll never let you suffer a single grievance. Not only my son, no one else will ever be allowed to bully you either." Her eyes brimmed with genuine affection. Daniel lowered his head, turning his back slightly to his parents as he whispered to me, "I don't mean anything else. If you don't want to marry so soon, I'll wait for you." My heart ached suddenly. I bowed my head and answered softly, "I'll follow your arrangements, Daniel. Wherever you lead, I'll follow." That night, the wind whispered outside the window. I wrapped myself in the quilt, unable to fall asleep. A gentle knock sounded at the door. "Anna, are you still awake?" Daniel's voice came. I gave a faint, He stood outside, holding a cup of warm milk. "I thought you might not sleep well in a new place, so I brought you something." When I took the cup, my fingertips brushed his, and a strange, unnameable feeling rose inside me. He looked at me, his voice low. "Anna, I don't even know why you chose me, but don't accept me too quickly. I expect nothing from you, just know that I can protect you." My voice came out hoarse. "Why did you agree to marry me?" He smiled, his even white teeth bright against his red lips. "Actually, I've known about you for a long time. I once saw you dance. You were beautiful." I was startled, lifting my gaze to his. His eyes were calm, yet beneath them burned a heat I couldn't dismiss. In that moment, no more words were needed. I felt that no matter how stormy the road ahead might be, starting over was worth it. Not long after, news spread in the city. The Railway Bureau had assigned us a young, talented, refined cadre, Chris Kent. At the welcome meeting, the unit arranged performances. They said the technical staff member, Jessica Tran, wore a white dress and performed a solo dance. As she spun, her eyes locked with Chris's from below the stage. That very night, rumors about the two of them spread like wildfire. When I heard, I only smiled faintly. I knew all too well the tricks Jessica used. Every detail was etched into my memory from my past life. At dawn, I rose to wash my face. Just then, I saw Daniel coming out from the room next door. Carrying my basin of water, I called, Daniel, have you eaten? But before I could finish, he ducked his head and quickly stepped into the study, looking tense. Curious, I quietly followed. Dad, I have something to say. Daniel stood straight before his father, his eyes unwavering. Speak, his father said, setting down the newspaper, his brow slightly furrowed. Anna has great artistic talent. I want her to join the cultural troupe to study performance. You know the troupe is the Army's key cultural propaganda unit. If she gets in, she'll gain both skills and a secure future. His father was silent for a while, then sighed. It's not easy. Quotas are tight, and there are strict selections. What do you plan to do? Daniel answered firmly. I intend to ask acquaintances for help with the procedures, to at least give her a chance. Anna has talent and works hard. I believe she can succeed. A flicker of approval crossed his father's eyes, though his voice stayed stern. You're a soldier's son. Don't let others think you're relying on connections. Since you've chosen her, we'll give it everything. Go to Deputy Chief Jong of the troop and explain the situation clearly. Daniel nodded hard. Thank you, Dad. I'll make it happen. The day I went to submit my application to the cultural troupe, the sun hadn't risen yet. Outside the gate, a long line of people was already waiting. I wore the new outfit Daniel's mother had prepared for me, my hair cropped short and neat. Standing in the morning light, I felt like a tender green sprout just breaking through the earth. Yet my back remained straight. Isn't that Annalie? A sharp, familiar voice rang out behind me. I turned to see Jessica Tran. She wore a pale pink velvet jacket with a delicate wool scarf, her fine brows and eyes standing out among the crowd. As she walked closer, her gaze swept over me. She sneered. I thought you'd spend your whole life hiding in that little village. I didn't expect you'd also try to get into the cultural troupe. I stayed silent, my face calm. She leaned in deliberately, lowering her voice. Weren't you once determined to marry Chris Kent? And now I hear you've latched onto an officer's son. Humph, you're better at climbing up than I thought. I looked straight at her without replying. She pressed harder, laughing meanly. Do you think just because you can dance a little, you'll get into the troupe? Don't dream. Not everyone can squeeze in here. When the audition comes, don't come running home crying. It'd be too humiliating. I smiled faintly. Jessica, I remember a few years ago you were still sitting in the village sun, spreading grain with cracked hands. Now you're all dressed up and talking big. Must be thanks to someone else, isn't it? Her face shifted instantly. She was about to snap back when the registration clerk called. Next. I stepped forward at the sound of my name, leaving her behind, trembling with rage, her teeth clenched so tightly she nearly shook. The preliminary round of the cultural troupe was held in the old auditorium. Among the audience sat many officials and several military leaders. I wore a sky blue practice outfit, carefully sewn by Daniel's mother, my hair neatly tied with a cloth ribbon. Standing backstage, I waited for my name. Jessica stood ahead of me, draped in a thin gauze wrap. She cast me a condescending glance. You chose Song of the Mountains? That's so outdated. No one wants to hear that. I didn't respond, only tightened my belt. She leaned closer, voice dripping with mockery. Chris Kent is down there today. I'm sure I'll win. When you go off key, don't blame me for laughing at you. My eyes flickered slightly, but I only smiled coolly. Thanks for the reminder, but I've only ever sung for those who truly understand. When it was her turn, the stage lights blazed. Her graceful dance, Plum Blossom, flowed soft and delicate, stirring murmurs among the crowd. As she finished with a bow, she stepped down brimming with confidence, her eyes full of challenge as they met mine. Then the announcer's voice rang out, Annalie, performing Song of the Mountains. I stepped onto the stage and stood before the microphone. The whispering in the hall gradually died down. The music began, and I opened with the first note, pure and soaring, clear as spring water echoing through the night, steady as a morning drum waking a dream. As the melody carried on, I spread my arms and danced, as though leading the audience into the mountains, where a girl with a flower basket sang her folk song. Several elder officials nodded in approval. In the audience, Daniel's father quietly set aside his pipe. Daniel himself didn't blink, watching intently as my dance flowed with the song. When I finished and bowed, the hall went silent for a heartbeat, then erupted in thunderous applause. Someone whispered, "Which unit brought her here?" Another replied, "She's not from a unit. I heard she might be related to Commander Hart." Chris Kent also sat in the crowd, his gaze locked on me, filled with complicated emotions, his expression dazed. Jessica, however, had gone pale, her fingers clutching her handkerchief so tightly it trembled, as if she'd just been slapped by the heavens. I was admitted to the cultural troupe. A few days later, Jessica's name also appeared on the training list. No one knew what strings she had pulled, but the rumor spread quickly. Chris Kent had found someone to get her in. I didn't react. In my past life, the sooner she entered, the sooner she died. That day, after practice, I had just stepped out of the rehearsal room when I immediately sensed something was wrong behind me. The deputy head of the troop, his face stern, called me into the office. On the desk lay a letter of accusation. "Anna Lay lives an indecent life, associating with an officer's son and disrupting the discipline of the troop." I glanced at it, the corner of my lips curling into a cold smile. Jessica Tran's tricks were all too familiar. She didn't dare strike openly, so she resorted to slander, trying to drag me through the mud. Suddenly, the door burst open. Daniel Hart strode in, still in uniform, his brows furrowed tight. "Who wrote this?" he demanded. The deputy head stiffened. "Staff Officer Hart. In any case, this kind of accusation can't be entirely baseless. We're investigating." Daniel didn't even glance at the paper. His voice was sharp. "My fiancé was personally registered by my mother. Her name is clearly written in the military record. If anyone dares to smear her again, I'll treat it as defaming a soldier's family and deal with it accordingly." His words slammed down like a verdict. The deputy head broke into a sweat. "A misunderstanding. Just a misunderstanding. We'll issue a correction immediately." That very day, the cultural troupe posted an official notice declaring the accusations malicious fabrications, the investigation unfounded, and publicly restored my innocence. Out in the corridor, I caught sight of Jessica hiding in a corner. She blocked my path, hissing, "You're really lucky, so many people shielding you. As long as someone outranks the rest, they can crush everyone beneath them." Daniel appeared behind me, his gaze icy. "Anna is my fiancée. Protecting her is my duty." Jessica bit down on her handkerchief, too afraid to speak further. Hatred burned in her eyes as she glared at me. I shot her a cool look and sneered. "Jessica, this debt is only just beginning." The night before the troop's gala, I was targeted again. This time, the accusations were even harsher. Anna Lee's family background is unclear. On the surface, she sings revolutionary songs, but behind closed doors, she spreads capitalist ideology. She used underhanded means to force her way into the troop, tainting its purity. It wasn't just rumors anymore. It was an official announcement, with my name printed in black and white. In front of the office building, a group of Red Guards surrounded me, declaring I had to be taken away for investigation into my identity and political background. Before I could speak, two youths with armbands rushed forward and seized my arms, their eyes brimming with cold righteousness. The deputy head of the troop rushed out to block them. "On what grounds are you arresting her? Where's the investigative conclusion? Do you have an official document?" the leader sneered. "Seems you've forgotten your place. If you interfere again, we'll report you as well." My heart trembled with chill. Then, at the far end of the hallway, the sharp clack, clack, clack of high heels echoed. Silence fell as all eyes turned. A woman in a moss-green coat and military cap strode forward, her steps steady and commanding. She stopped in front of me and spoke. "I am Margaret's son, former head of the cultural troupe. I can personally vouch for my daughter-in-law, Anna Lay. I know her background and character better than anyone." She fixed the Red Guards with a steely gaze, her voice not loud, yet filled with undeniable authority. "If you want to take her, you'll have to step over me first." The air stretched taut as a bowstring. Just then, Daniel came rushing in, his face grave, pulling me behind him. "I am Daniel Hart, staff officer of the 54th Regiment. Anna's father was also a soldier. She is my rightful fiancée. I stake my military honor to guarantee her. If anyone dares utter another slander against her, I will not forgive it." The Red Guards exchanged glances, their faces twisted in frustration, but at last they released me. Margaret's son stood in front of me like a shield, her sharp eyes sweeping the crowd. "Anyone who dares stain my daughter-in-law's name had better be ready to pay the price." I gazed at her back, strong and unwavering. My fingers were icy cold, but my heart grew warmer. Daniel Hart was by my side, steadying me, his voice soft. "Don't be afraid. No one dares touch you now. You have me, and a family too." The gala performance went on as scheduled. The original program listed Jessica Tran's solo dance as the finale, but suddenly it was announced that she and I would perform together, a duet of River of Jiangnan. When I saw the program sheet, I laughed coldly. Of course, she still wasn't willing to give up. Backstage, Daniel caught my hand, anger on his face. "She's trying to pull something on you again, isn't she? I'll go handle it." I held on to him and whispered, "This time, let me." The stage lights blazed bright. Jessica stood in front, clad in green, her posture dazzling and proud. I remained in the back, dressed in pale silk, quiet and still. As the music began, her movements burst forth, exaggerated and provocative, and she even deliberately bumped into me during a turn. But I simply lifted my sleeve and flowed into the dance, my steps fluid, my posture steady as a pine tree, all while burying the seething hatred of my past life deep inside. With each movement, I pressed down Jessica's presence, dimming her brilliance piece by piece. As the dance drew to a close, I spun once, my skirt swirling like falling snow, and landed squarely before her, capturing every gaze and seizing all the spotlight. The hall fell silent for a breath, then thundered with applause. The deputy head of the troupe leapt to his feet in excitement. This is the true bearing of a lead performer." Jessica's face turned pale, her eyes blazing with hatred as she glared at me. Backstage, Daniel draped a cloak over my shoulders, his eyes unable to hide his amazement. "Anna, tonight, you truly made my heart want to leap out of my chest." I tilted my head, teasing, "Look at you. No composure at all." He chuckled. "You danced so beautifully, I almost couldn't hold back. I wanted to rush up, pull you down, and keep anyone else from seeing you." I laughed and tried to push him away, but he caught my hand tightly. "Don't avoid me. I know you love dancing. I'll stand with you in everything you want. For every performance you give, I'll sit in the audience, watching only you." One by one, I returned every trick Jessica had once used to harm me. By the time all the evidence piled onto the troop leader's desk, Daniel's mother happened to be present, sipping tea. She called Jessica in and slammed the files onto the table. "What are you, to dare slander the daughter-in-law of my family? The cultural troupe has no place for someone who specializes in harming others." Jessica's face drained of color. She was declared expelled on the spot, her work badge stripped from her. Everyone's eyes turned on her with nothing but disgust. I stood at the doorway, waiting to receive a commendation medal, when she went wild, rushing at me and screaming, "You're nothing but a woman who climbed up by relying on men." I answered coolly, "Too bad. Even if you relied on others, you could never stand on stage." In the end, Jessica destroyed herself. She had tampered with official notices, filed malicious accusations, even schemed sabotage on stage. Everything was exposed with undeniable evidence. Worse, all her backing had come from the Railway Bureau's internal resources, favors borrowed by Chris Kent on her behalf. The troupe was shaken, and the leaders were furious. That very day, Chris was summoned to the disciplinary committee for questioning. When he came out, his face was ashen. He immediately dragged Jessica into a jeep and drove her straight back to the countryside. She clung to his arm, sobbing hysterically. "You told me you loved me. You told me you hated Anna Lee. You told me I was the moonlight in your heart." But he only gave her a cold glance. That was when I was blind. Back in her hometown, she had no place left to stand. When her mother saw her daughter return branded with disciplinary punishment, her family hurried to arrange a marriage for her, with a man in his 40s, crippled in one leg, whose wife had died young. His home was destitute, his temper coarse and violent. 3 years after the wedding, she still had no children. Life sank into a swamp of misery. Villagers whispered that she would often grind her teeth while stoking the stove, muttering, "Why did she get to marry a soldier? What does she have that I don't?" At midnight, clutching her pillow, she would mumble to herself, "Chris Kent once said he'd marry me, that he'd take me to the city." In time, unable to endure the poverty, she secretly returned to the city to look for me, intending to force her way back into the cultural troupe under the guise of a former member paying a visit. That day, I had just finished practice and stepped out to buy some water. She appeared in tattered clothes, smudged makeup still clinging to her face, clutching a protest banner and babbling about injustice. I stopped her coldly. "If you don't leave right now, the Red Guards will invite you in for tea." Her face turned pale. The banner slipped from her hands before she could raise it, swept away by the wind. Meanwhile, my fellow troop girls clustered around me, escorting me back. No one spared her a glance. Driven mad, she shrieked after me, You stole Chris Kent from me." I didn't stop walking, only left her with a flat reply. "Didn't you say yourself he'd be yours sooner or later? I'll return him to you. You two are a perfect match." After that, she lost her mind completely. Some said she spent her days by a broken stove, whispering to the empty air. Others said whenever she heard the sound of a military bugle, she would lose control, hair flying, rushing to the village gate and screaming wildly, "Don't steal him! He's mine!" He promised me. In the end, she didn't dare leave her house anymore. The villagers wrote a letter to tell me about her state. Daniel asked me quietly, "You won't pity her, will you?" I smiled faintly, running my fingers over a button on his uniform. The only one I could pity died, because of her, in my past life. Word came that Chris Kent had been heavily disciplined. I heard the news while rehearsing in the troupe. Daniel stood at the doorway, handing me a bottle of warm water. I took it. "Chris Kent already knows, doesn't he?" Daniel nodded, his expression uneasy. "He's been punished, temporarily transferred. Do you feel sorry for him?" I tilted my head back, drained a sip, and smiled faintly. "No." That evening, on my way back to the dormitory, someone blocked my path. It was Chris Kent. He stood in the twilight, his eyes overflowing with regret. "Anna, I was wrong. I finally understand my heart. The one I've loved from beginning to end has always been you." So his version of love was tangling with a female subordinate while he was a leader? Feeding another woman's jealousy just to retaliate against me? Using every dirty trick to drag me into the mud, then pretending to save me afterward? "Chris Kent, you call that love? That kind of love only disgusts me." I looked at him calmly. "Didn't I already tell you? I hoped you'd never appear before me again." His voice cracked. "Anna, I truly was wrong. Whatever the Hart family gives you, I can give you too. You want to join the cultural troupe, to have wealth and glory, to stand at the center of the stage. I can help you win it all." I gave no reply. Behind me came the sound of steady, familiar footsteps. Daniel walked to my side and naturally took my hand. He looked straight at Chris Kent, his voice cold. "What she wants, I can not only give, but I'd lay down my life to protect." Daniel and I were preparing to wed. The old Hart family villa was hung with red lanterns, its courtyard carpeted in crimson. Guests flowed in and out, military officers and government officials from across the city. The wedding banquet filled both floors of the house, arranged by hand. Daniel's father made calls, inviting his old comrades in arms and leaders from the regiment. I wore a pale red gown, altered from a kyongsam. As I descended the stairs, I heard someone whisper in awe, "Isn't that the rising star of the cultural troupe, Annalie? She's stunning." Daniel's mother, busy greeting guests, clutched my hand tightly, her smile so wide it couldn't be contained. "From today, you are truly the daughter of our Hart family. Anyone who dares bully you will have to face me first." I smiled at her, my nose stinging. In my past life, I had been forced into the Kent family, plunging straight into hell. In this life, I chose Daniel Hart myself. That was stepping into the light of dawn. Suddenly, a stir rose in the corner of the hall. I turned my head and saw Chris Kent, dusty and weary, standing at the doorway. Guests murmured, "Isn't that the railway bureaucrat who was suspended? What's he doing here?" Chris's eyes found mine, filled with panic and pain. I lifted my chin high and walked straight up to him. His voice was low. "Anna, do you really want to marry him? Don't you know I came back to the city for you? I've done so much for you." "I know," I cut him off, "but it's all far too late." Suddenly, he seized my hand. "He's not worthy of you. He only leans on his family." From the midst of the guests, Daniel emerged in his pressed uniform, his expression calm. With a firm gesture, he pulled me behind him protectively, his voice deep and leaving no room for argument. "Whether I'm worthy or not is for my wife to decide. You have no right to say. Today, if you're here to drink to our happiness, you're welcome. But if you're here to cause trouble, I'll have to ask you to leave. On a day like this, don't force me to strike you." Chris's grip tightened, his face pale as he stared at me. Anna, you truly won't look back? I met his gaze, my words slow and deliberate. Chris Kent, I've already lived that path once. It left nothing but scars that will never fade. In the next moment, Daniel took my hand and gently placed it on his arm. Side by side, we walked into the crowd together, leaving Chris Kent standing alone outside, cut off from the warmth and noise as if it had never existed. The wedding hall glowed with warm lights. Guests raised their glasses in blessing, applause echoing like thunder. In this life, I would never shed tears for the wrong man again. At last, Chris Kent's disciplinary order came down. Because of Jessica Tran's anonymous denunciation and his old scandals being unearthed, he was branded with a grave political stain. His cadre position was stripped, he was demoted to a laborer and sent to guard a remote railway scrapyard. That place was bitterly cold year-round, with more rats than people. A month's ration ticket was barely enough for half a pound of oil. His housing was a ragged hut that the wind tore through, his meals nothing but moldy flour cakes and pickled vegetables. He had once been a promising young cadre at the branch bureau, his future bright. Now he would never rise again. In my past life, what he treasured most was his title and reputation. This punishment struck precisely where it hurt most. I once asked Daniel, "Isn't this punishment too heavy?" He held me, his voice calm but with a trace of bitterness. "Who told him to deliberately bully you?" I pinched his arm, teasing. "Sir Hart, are you using official power for personal revenge?" He lowered his head, kissed my temple lightly, and said slowly, "No. Public matters are public, private matters are private." His actions deserved punishment. I only made sure he tasted retribution sooner. From now on, I would be a shining light, while he was nothing more than a faded speck of dust.